Welcome back to another Game Time Discussions. I'm Emery Cuzzy. I'm sitting here with Cameron Selby, and we are going to be attacking the wide receiver and tight end position for the fantasy football rankings early June, still before we even get into it. So we're going to do another release in August of all this stuff also. But how we're looking at it right now, very exciting. 60 wide receivers ranked, 22 total tight ends ranked. So it's going to be a fun one.
Yeah, a lot of pass catchers 1.0. Let's get right into it. There shouldn't be a surprise with tier one of the wide receivers. It's Jamar, it's CD, it's Justin, whatever order you prefer. To us, we have the slight swap of CD versus Justin compared to other best ball platforms at the very moment. That's purely just because one's going third, one's going sixth, and we just prefer the discount,
Right.
Especially if we're going in the middle of drafts.
I mean, and the biggest difference is if you have a healthy Dak versus if you have a JJ McCarthy who we haven't seen yet. And we weren't as high on him. It wasn't that we were lower on him in the way of like Cam Ward versus him when we talked about all that stuff during the draft stuff. But CD has Dak, and we've seen that proven to work, especially when they don't have a total defense. Mm-hmm. And if you look at what's happening on their defense with injuries in the last couple of years, guys leaving, I think that we might see that similar thing happen.
Yeah, and it's very slim margins with these guys up top. You cannot go wrong either way.
Right.
If I want to just project, maybe I give a slight touchdown bump edge in projection to CD and Justin over Justin, which is why we kind of have it that way. That doesn't mean Justin can't have 1,500 yards and all that good stuff, but maybe if it's like 6-7 touchdowns, that might not be enough to become the bona fide top three that we've seen in the last few years.
Right. And then let's go to tier 2, where we have some guys that could end up in tier 1 at the end of the year. One of the guys that I really want to bring up is, there's 3 guys that I want to bring up, and they're all kind of the similar mold of player. It's Nico Collins, it's Brian Thomas Jr., and it's Drake London. All 3 of those guys we've been really getting after in best ball, and they are that X receiver. They're going to score those touchdowns. They have 12 touchdown plus upside, and that's why I really like them. A.J. Brown, of course, is down there, and he's the same way. He just plays on an offense where they have so many weapons and running quarterback, but the other 3,
that doesn't help matter as much. But yeah, there's a lot of fun, just target hogs. This is a huge area of just safety as a wide receiver one, perfectly having 12. The one that we did add that most people probably wouldn't have in this tier is Terry McLaurin, bumped up 4 spots. He finally broke out into truly becoming a wide receiver one, and it happened with a quarterback, which you don't see that often. But yeah, he was as reliable as they come. And then all these guys have the opportunity to even do better. And then it's just kind of mixing and matching whatever preference or route you want to start your draft. A lot of these guys going on the back end of the first round, early in the second. So you're able to grab 1 or even 2 of those guys, you're in really good shape.
Yep, absolutely. Let's go over to tier 3, where, if you look at tier 3, which I can get my mouse to work. There we go. It's kind of the guys that, are ready to break out, in my opinion. You got Garrett Wilson, who hasn't had a serious quarterback. You have a Marvin Harrison, who was a rookie last year. We love sophomore receivers in here, and we've talked about a couple, if you Lab McConkey and Malik. But as you look down this, it's like, who's gonna break out? And Tyreek doesn't count because he's done that. Devontae doesn't count, but the other guys are kind of in this tier for that reason.
It's kind of a blend of just guys that are waiting to take the next step, and then those that were in the tier 1 coming down to earth because they're moving into their prime. Tyreek Hill's kind of tough because that was the best bet I could have made, that he was going to be on a different team, and he's still a Dolphin.
Right.
So if he is projecting as a Dolphin, hopefully with Tua, that he's still a very, very reliable fantasy asset. But if Tua goes down, we saw what happened last year, and I would expect more of the same if that were to be the case. Devontae's one of the more interesting ones in the top 25, really, of all receivers, because you don't know with Matthew Stafford, he just kind of pepper targets his dominant wide receiver ones. And so does that bring Puka and him more together, or does that spread them further apart? We saw Cooper Kupp have a dominant game when Puka Nacua was out, but then once Puka was back, Cooper was phased out so fast in this offense. Obviously, Devontae is playing better than Cooper Kupp was at this respect last year, but it'll be an interesting thing to watch for sure.
Yep. And then let's go on to the next set, the tier 4. Here we go. A couple rookies that, we really, of course, there's a bunch of vets, but I want to talk about the rookies because we actually have Travis Hunter ranked higher than Tedero McMillan, and we know Tedero will be the bona fide number 1 in that offense, while Travis Hunter's a wide receiver 2 in his offense, most likely to start it out at least. I think that this whole thing and going back and forth, we actually had Travis Hunter as our number one wide receiver. We believe that he's actually better as a wide receiver 2 in an offense this early in his career. That's why we see it this way.
Yeah, he'll be an excellent compliment. He's also inheriting an offense with Liam Cohen, who just was able to have multiple wide receivers have success. So I expect him and Brian Thomas to get their fair share of targets. There's not much going on after that. It's De'Ami Brown and it's Brenton Strange.
Yeah.
So it's obviously he's walking into very efficient targets and hopefully a lot of targets going down the line, especially if one or the other goes down, then that just means the other one might end up being a top 10, floor guy every single week.
For sure. Other guys up there, we have Cortland Sutton, probably higher than most. I want to shout him out because we believe that he is being the number one in an offense that is Sean Payton led and Bo Nix. That really makes a lot of sense, and I think that he deserves his flowers.
I think most people have him in this tier, but it's at the end of the tier instead of the beginning. And with me, it's just he had the safest floor. He was the most consistent of this entire range every single week last year, and as long as he's staying healthy, there's not much that he is competing with in targets. It's an aging Evan Ingram, and then it's just a bunch of day 2, day 3 wide receivers that are just going to trade boom weeks.
Right.
But he's just going to be the guy that's always going to have 8 to 10 targets as long as he's healthy, and it's going to work out pretty well for him.
And he's a touchdown guy, so that doesn't hurt either. Tier 5. Got some guys that we are higher on in the top of this tier, in Jacoby Myers and Stephon Diggs. Now, I don't know that they actually are in this tier on some people's boards. No, that's the big difference.
Those are our two biggest, positive intervals compared to the consensus. They are in the 40s on both best ball platforms, and I would anticipate redraft would start out the same way. But at the end of the day, Jacoby Myers finished as a top 25 wide receiver last year, and they added Jack Besh. And you, in your estimation,
he was wide receiver 14.
Drafted. He hasn't really been a hugely productive receiver in terms of the fantasy asset. So it's him, it's G&T, and it's Bowers, and there's no reason that all three shouldn't be able to feast all at once. Maybe he doesn't have as high of a floor as he did previously because they'll be running a lot more.
Improved quarterback play though. You got to forget Geno.
It's not Gardner Minshew. It's Geno Smith. And then Stephon Diggs. If we're anticipating a breakout with New England and Drake May especially. As long as Stephon Diggs is on the team, he is a wide receiver 1. He's actually looking and feeling healthier than like a Brandon Ayuk, which he is basically right next to. And we know Brandon Ayuk is going to miss time. So I just don't get why he is in that far down other than, starting OTAs or the mandatory minicamp missing the first day.
Right.
And just we're way past that already. And the very next day he was doing a drill and it's just like, oh, yeah, he's already kind of back into form.
We're trying to beat the trend on Stephon Diggs because everybody wants to draft Drake May early. So why not draft his number 1 receiver? And that's kind of what we're doing here with him. The other guy I want to talk about on here is Jameson Williams because we have not necessarily completely disagree, but it's like there is I think you had him in tier 6 and I said I think he should be in tier 5. You did move him up because of that, I believe, and also just kind of the guys that he's around. I think he's got that opportunity for the big games more so.
My biggest problem is just current ADP as a top 25 receiver.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Again, I think Detroit is taking a step back. He is the first guy that comes to mind that is going to have a negative regression because of that. And if that is the case, and if it's not, then it is what it is. But a top 25 pick, that's a 5th round draft capital. That's really tough to get to. And even though you do like him, it's not like you view him higher than where he's going. You still probably would put him below where he's going, but it's just kind of close enough to where you would take a few more shots than I would.
I think the biggest thing is too, it's best ball. So a lot of people are going to take shots on a guy that has boom game upside and you don't have to pick who starts every week. With Jameson Williams, if you have to pick him on your fantasy team, it's a little bit harder to justify that he's price tag, basically.
2-yard floor, and he's got a 4-catch end around touchdown plus 2 in the air.
Exactly.
Like that's his upside, but I don't know when that's going to come week in and week out.
Yeah. Going to tier 6. There we go. Guy that got moved. Okay, so a lot of guys that actually moved to new teams on this little graph here. You've got Debo, you've got Cooper Kupp, you've got George Pickens. All those guys, I don't know what to do with. They're really, really difficult.
It's called ultimate uncertainty. Because
tough.
I
it's
just
so
don't know
tough.
what to do with it. George Pickens, he was in the mid 40s and then was traded to Dallas, and then he vaulted all the way up to being a mid 5th round pick. And I'm just like, I'm not touching that. Chris Godwin is coming off a broken leg. Plus, they added another wide receiver. Plus, their OC is gone.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I like the player, but he's going higher than he was last year, and it's just kind of tough to view it that way. The two 49er receivers don't know what to do with, but if IU's going to miss time, then one of them should be a huge beneficiary, especially early on. Juwan was a more consistent one last year, but maybe Ricky just needs a full training camp as like, hey, this is
You're the
your
guy.
spot.
Yeah, you're the guy.
No more Debo. IU won't be there most of the summer, so he has the opportunity to step into having a very successful year too. Don't know which one. Don't have the confidence. Just a small bump to Juwan because we've seen him have success for us in recent games.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting that you left Cooper Kupp in this range. He's so I know. I actually was thinking he was going to be in tier 7 for you. But Cooper Kupp is, if he does have his year, if he does find himself again, he is one of the best football players at the wide receiver position. So
yeah,
it's tough. It's super
and
tough.
Debo, I can kind of put them together. They're two of our like lowest viewed receivers. At least Cooper Kupp, his ADP is dropping far enough to where we're kind of like right with the field. But Debo, I just don't get the buzz at all for him as a wide receiver. 3 in the 6th round, 5th, 6th round. I'm just not there at all right now on him, and it's just I have no interest in either one really right now.
Yeah, where they're at for sure. Going on to the next tier, it's tier 7. Pair of teammates on the top of it, but this is kind of the group of like got some rookies in there. You've got some young guys, and that kind of figuring it out, and then you also have a couple 3-year signees in Darnell Mooney and Rashad Bateman there.
Yeah, Rashad Bateman newly extended, and then a lot of these guys like they have the opportunity to have like the solid second half of the year or just a segment of the year where they're really a wide receiver 2 to wide receiver 3. Very interesting flex appeal. Don't know if that can last throughout the season. Maybe it takes an injury. There's just a lot of mouths to feed on all these offenses. San Francisco, we just mentioned. Green Bay, we didn't love Matthew Golden going there, and he just kind of blends in with a bunch of wide receiver 2s and 3s. The Colts, yeah, it's JT. It's a bunch of wide receivers. We don't even talk about A.D. Mitchell anymore, and we really liked him coming out, and we hated the spot.
Yeah,
Keon Coleman, kind of similar thing. Opportunities there. Don't know if he's going to take advantage. Rashad Bateman had a breakout year last year. So did Darnell Mooney. But you don't know if it's sustainable. Like, it's not like either team added people, but guess what? They're still going to be the 3rd, 4th option on the team every single week. And they'll occasionally have the touchdown upside, but they're probably better best ball assets than they are redraft assets.
No, I completely agree with that. I think Keon Coleman is the only guy that I'm like in this. Well, not like the only guy in this range I'm a bet on, but I think Keon Coleman's a guy I want to bet on. I just think he's better than Khalil. I just don't know if I think Khalil Shakur is good. And we had Keon Coleman wide receiver 9 or 10, so it's not like we're super high on him last year, but it's like I think he's better than that guy.
Right.
Going on to the last tier. Couple more rookies,
this is just
3 rookies
opportunities, and a couple of vets falling out.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest name, and probably like you won't see a single ranking system having him as a top 60 receiver. This is a straight up gamble, but we're taking shots at the 59th and 60th overall receivers. We're not just going to say the 62nd best receiver is actually 59. Who cares? That's not going to help you out on either best ball or redraft. But we're going to take a shot on Troy Franklin, who apparently is just night and day different this OTAs in the early part of the summer. Positive reports coming out, and he's the 8th option as a flex player or a skill player coming off the board for Denver. So we're just going to say, hey, Denver deserves to have 2 people in the top 60, but Marvin Mims is going as wide receiver 2. He had less than 30% of the snaps last year.
Yep.
Why is that going to change with Troy Franklin having a second year now? Pat Bryant also as a day 2 receiver coming in.
Vele
has had some positive things, so I'm not touching Marvin Mims.
No.
And then all the other guys, it's just like, why not bet on a Troy Franklin who has been a deep threat? He just, he dropped some touchdowns last year, dropped one in the postseason, and I just anticipate, hey, maybe he'll have a little bit more snaps, and if he starts playing better, somebody is going to be a top 50 receiver with Denver, and I'm just going to take the gamble as Troy.
Troy Franklin had a 10% drop rate in college, which is something we had talked about, but he was actually ranked higher than Xavier Legette, who's on this board, Keon Coleman, who's on this board. We believe in the talent. We just haven't gotten him on the field enough. Just like an A.D. Mitchell, who we talked about a second ago. We believe in that talent. but they just went to the wrong situations to start their career in their first year. We love sophomore receivers. This is a guy that has an opportunity to break out.
Yeah, and then there's a trio of rookie receivers that it's just kind of I don't really know what to do with. All of them kind of getting drafted in the wide receiver 5 range, and Jaden Higgins, I guess, has the most opportunity for snaps early on, but who knows if that'll lead to consistent production
Right.
out of that position. Luther Burden, we liked him coming out, but he just kind of comes into a situation that suddenly there's just a lot of mouths to feed, an offense that we didn't think that was possible last year. They couldn't. Yeah. And then Trey Harris, he's kind of basically filling the Josh Palmer role. We were really in like with Josh Palmer last year, and he was just kind of so-so, and he was going exactly where he's going. So as a rookie, I don't know if I expect too much of a change. Maybe he'll get a couple of extra targets. Maybe he'll have a little bit more consistent success. But I think it's a wait and see for him.
Yeah, but we're Trey Harris fans, at least coming out of the draft and stuff like that. So hopefully we see him take over at least as a deep threat, because Quentin Johnson runs a lot of shorter routes, and he did that at TCU also. So going over to the tight ends, starting it off, we're going to talk about the top 3 tight ends here. Brock Bowers, Brock Bowers, George Kittle, and Trey McBride. These guys are just a step above everybody. They're, possible number 1 targets on their teams. And that's something you can't say about anybody else on this list, in my opinion.
It's not just a tier break from here. It's like maybe another tier below that.
Right.
Just leave a tier blank after this because of how big of an impact that each of these guys will have. Brock Bowers set a receptions and receiving yards record as a rookie tight end. Hopefully touchdowns can come with that now that Geno's there. Trey McBride, also hopefully positive touchdown regression. He didn't have a receiving touchdown until the final or second to last week of the season. And then George Kittle, as long as he's healthy, he's the number 1 pass threat in that offense. And, now he's going to be 32 years old. How long can he stay on?
Right.
But while he is playing,
Ayuk, Debo's gone, all those things
last year from the position. So
I would say he's the number 1 receiver if I had to pick one out of the 3 that are going to be starting the year.
Right.
Let's go over to the tier 2. Another 3 guys. Sam Laporta, he is my feeling of regression, but at the same time, we have to put him up here because he has the better quarterback. He's a good quarterback. He has a good opportunity for catch share, and he's a good in the red zone.
Well, the positive thing for this tier also is that because so many people were scarred from the non-dominant tight end tier last year not panning out, basically it's ballooned out to where you're taking it early or you're waiting way late. Sam Laporta is going the 7th round right now. TJ Hawkinson is going the 8th round. Kelsey is 7th or 8th, depending on if you're on Underdog or Best Ball. And it's just like I don't mind taking the shot on them as a best ball asset as a tight end 1, getting a strong, formidable backup, and then you're probably set with 2 tight ends and just can move forward with your life. It's just pretty simple. Kelsey obviously is the scariest of the 3, which is why he is ranked 3rd of this trio. But at the same time, now that maybe Rashee Rice, Marquise Brown are healthy, and then hopefully he's the 4th option, not having to be the 1st option. And he just kind of inherits and ages well, kind of like a Tony Gonzalez did, where, he didn't have to be an 11 target a game guy. He just was a very good red zone threat, and just he was efficient with his target.
I believe tight end should be 3rd options. They should never be 1st options. So that really helps their production, in my personal opinion.
Right.
Tier 3, going to be a group of 5 here. The guy that I want to talk about the most is Jonnu Smith. We do have Tyler Warren, of course, but Jonnu Smith is the most interesting to me because he might be traded. He is apparently good, and Arthur Smith was right, and all these things. But Jonnu is kind of what happens if he goes somewhere else? Because in this offense, they want to throw him the ball, and they want to give him the ball.
Yeah, he's one of the most interesting because there's trade rumors, but then also like if he stays there, I mean, he was the most consistent pass catcher for Miami last season, and obviously he won some leagues. If you were able to invest and thank him, I remember games of just like he has 1 catch. Oh, they go to overtime. Oh no, he
4
had all the
more
catches on that drive and the touchdown.
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
So even when he wasn't doing bad, he was still salvaging the way he did. And so the problem is he's already kind of going right exactly where we have him. So it's not like we're in love with the range. Like Tyler Warren, he's going 2.5 rounds later. So it's like I'd rather just have him as the tight end 2 or tight end 1 in a committee approach. But I mean, very serviceable. David Njoku, I don't know what the quarterback situation is, but I mean, he was the most consistent guy over the last season and a half for them when he's been on the field. Mark Andrews, as long as he's not traded, like everybody wanted to write him off, and he led the position in touchdowns, I believe, last year.
Right.
Evan Ingram, kind of an unknown because it's an aging tight end that wasn't very efficient with his catches, going to an offense that has really made the most of the tight end production, but they haven't had tight ends
Right.
to really throw it to. So very interesting range, but all guys that are worth starting.
Yep. And then we'll go over to tier 4. It's kind of a mosh posh. This is okay. Look, tier 3. After tier 3, if you do not have a tight end, you need multiple. That's just how it goes. You need at least 3 in best ball. But if I just want to like go ahead and point somebody out, I'm surprised Tucker Kraft's in this grouping. Kyle Pitts, I believe in him this year with a new quarterback. So there's a couple things that you can look across, but Dalton Kincaid, we really bet on him last year. Things like that. So
Colston Loveland, it's very interesting. He'll be a lot more appealing if and when Cole Kmet gets traded.
Right, of course.
But he kind of fell into a situation where it's like, okay, maybe he has. I think he has to be more efficient with his targets rather than having a consistent workload. So it's kind of scary where he's going, but he's going at a pretty decent discount. And then the next 4 are all guys that were going 7th, 8th round last year. All of them did not pan out. So all of them are going, between pick 130 and 160 right now.
Yeah.
So they're all
pick one.
tight end.
Who's your favorite?
Pick one. I still believe in the upside of all of them, but the floor is way lower than we thought. So as a tight end 2, I'm fine with all of them. Tucker Kraft is actually at the beginning of this tier for most people. He's the lowest regression that we have up to this point. But at the same time,
sure.
He didn't really lose the job when Luke Musgrave went down. And so he's just kind of a bunch of committee guy that he's there.
Yeah, he's in this group. Yeah. It's fine. Isaiah Likely, starting off the next group. The biggest guy is Mason Taylor. I think he could be he could be the receiver 2 in this offense, and that really gives him an upside. So if you want to bet on a first-year tight end, he's the guy I would bet on. Of course, we're also betting on Tyler Warren, but I mean, if you're really picking 180s,
yeah, based on price, he's going in the 160s, 170s. Thing is, Justin Fields, averages like 160 to 180 passing yards game. So if 90 is going to Garrett Wilson, that's 70 for the rest of the field. Can he be a consistently productive asset as a fantasy producer in his rookie year? Remains to be seen. Isaiah Likely would be a lot higher if Mark Andrews wasn't on the team.
Right, of course.
But it's just you can't really invest in him because he had that breakout week 1 and then just was unstartable for the most part in a redraft format last year. And now his price has just very much vaulted up. So it's even hard to double stack the two. So hard to invest in, but hey, if Mark Andrews goes down or gets traded,
take him.
That's a huge value. And
absolutely.
Then, Freiermuth, Hunter Henry, Cade Otton, trio of guys that on every now and again they're going to break out. Maybe especially on National Tight Ends Day, whenever that is in October. All these guys could be top 3 options on their team outside of Cade Otton, but Cade Otton at least has all the snaps to work with.
Right, for sure. All right, guys. Well, that is the end of our tiers. We appreciate y'all hanging out with us. We've been doing a lot of best ball stuff, so if y'all have been watching, we appreciate it. Me and Dustin have been doing draft stuff for the 2026 draft. We're going to be doing some stuff for the upcoming NCAA season. So a lot of stuff going on, but we appreciate y'all hanging out with us. Like, comment, subscribe. Tell us where we're wrong, where we're right, and we'll see you all on the next one.
Later, guys.